Choosing Love by ginnyrules27. Chapter 34. Ben sighed as he approached Lady Persephone. It honestly was one of the most nerve-wracking things he had done, and that included asking Mal out via song and dance in front of the entire school while pretending to be under a love potion spell. Though he honestly would do that again 1,000 times, then asked the question he was going to ask of Lady Persephone and Lord Hades. But he loved Mal. He loved the way her eyes would light up at the thought of mischief. He loved the way her tongue would stick out slightly as she worked on something in her sketchbook. He loved the way she could spar for hours with Uma or with Harry. He loved the way she was ready to help anyone who needed it. He loved her, and he didn't want to be without her.
Lady Persephone?
Ben asked, his voice soft. Yes, King Ben? Persephone asked, looking a little confused at the fact that the teenage king had approached her. Not that she wasn't happy to talk to any of Mal's friends or her boyfriend, but they'd been content to give her space to spend time with her children. Something that Mal and Hattie had readily latched onto, with the exception of that current moment. They were loath to leave her side. Is something wrong?
I had something I wanted to ask you. Well, you and Lord Hades, but Mal would probably kill me if I went to the Isle without her.
I have a feeling your friends would be right behind her, Persephone added. Young Prince Amir and Prince Akio were determined to keep Ben safe, and Persephone had to commend them for their loyalty to their friend. Jay, Harry and Uma were also extremely protective of Ben, but Persephone had to wonder how much of that loyalty was to the king and how much of it was loyalty to Mal. The goddess of vegetation knew her daughter would be devastated if anything happened to her boyfriend.
Yeah, Amir and Akio would definitely jump at the chance to knock some common sense into me, as they would say.
Ben nodded with a small smile as he thought about his friends. He knew the two of them wouldn't be alone. The rest of the Tawny team would probably be right behind them, with Chip joining the fray as well.
But, I would really like to ask both of you this question.
Persephone couldn't help but smile. She had a feeling she knew what the question was Ben wanted to ask of the two of them. If it was anyone else, she would have insisted they were too young to even think about it. But after everything the two of them had been through, there was no way Persephone could say no. Not to mention it took a great deal of bravery to ask such a question of two gods. Even asking mortal parents would be nerve-wracking, but the fact that Ben had not yet melted into a puddle of goo from sheer terror gave him points in Persephone's book. I have a portal, she said, looking over at Ben. It's how I cross between Auradon and the Isle every 6 months. At least it is when I am not needed by my children, and my daughter's boyfriend is kind enough to send me a car. Ben gave her a small smile at that, a smile that Persephone readily returned. But when it is not in use, she continued, it can be used almost like a telephone and a camera in one. Almost like a teleconferencing app here in Auradon. I'm the only one who can activate it though, and it can be done while I'm here in Auradon, due to the barrier. Ben nodded.
So, and I know this is a huge ask, but would we be able to go to the portal, Lady Persephone?
If he had to, he would make his way over to the Isle and ask Lord Hades in person. But this was the only way he knew where he could ask both of Mal's parents at the same time. They deserved to hear it at the same time. Plus, then Ben would get both of their ire at the same time if they disapproved. Of course, King Ben, Persephone nodded, standing up from her chair. Do you need to let anyone know where you're going?
There's nothing on my calendar today, thankfully,
Ben told her. Of course he had purposefully made it so there was nothing scheduled. No meetings, no council, no paperwork. Nothing that would make him even more nervous than he already was.
Besides, I'll be with you, your ladyship.
I'm pretty sure that's not a word. Persephone chuckled as they made their way out of the school, and towards the enchanted forest where her portal was located.
You can blame Prince Akio for that one,
Ben said with a chuckle of his own. Why does that not surprise me? Persephone shook her head in amusement. The young Prince of Arendelle certainly had his own particular way with words. Will you be all right teleporting to the enchanted forest?
I've never teleported before,
Ben confessed.
Mal's offered, but the only place where that could come in handy would have been our trips to the Isle. Unfortunately, due to the barrier, we're not able to teleport.
I do have to warn you, it's a bit jarring at first, Persephone told him as she rested a hand on his arm, leaves surrounding the two of them and obstructing their vision. When it faded, Ben saw that they were in fact in the enchanted forest. He also felt incredibly woozy, almost as if he'd spun around on a tilt-a-whirl too many times. The last time he had felt this dizzy was after getting hit in one of his final tourney games, and that hit had been so hard that he had been knocked out. Ah, yes, Persephone nodded as Ben sat down on a nearby stump, his head bent down near his knees. The dizziness will fade. Let me go ahead and contact my husband while you recover.
Appreciated, my lady.
Ben nodded and took a steadying breath as Persephone walked over to the portal, speaking Lord Hades' name as clearly as she could.
Lady Persephone?
Hello, Virgil, Persephone said with a smile in her voice. Ben had to smile as well as he heard the son of Panic's voice. While he had only interacted with a half-imp once, Ben knew him to be a good person. Plus, Mal liked him, claiming he was almost a sibling bond even though they were cousins. How are you?
I'm good. Is everything alright?
Everything's fine, Virgil. I'm just calling to talk to Hades. Is he available?
I'll go get him,
Virgil told her and walked off. Ben wasn't going to lie. He was thankful for the delay. It allowed him more time to clear his head and prepare what he was going to say. Did he wish he was face to face with Mal's father? Yes. However, there was a positive to using Portal. Ben was in one of his suits instead of his Isle garb of a brown shirt, jeans and his leather jacket and beanie. While he knew the clothes kept him safe on the Isle while he was there, he also knew he wanted to look his best while asking such an important question of a god.
Stuff?
Hades, Persephone said with a grin. I hope I'm not interrupting anything?
As I have told you numerous times, you are never an interruption,
Hades said with a small grin of his own, before the grin faded and a worried look took its place.
But is everything alright? You never call this early. Did something happen with Mal? With Hattie? Uma?
Everything's fine, dear. Nothing's wrong with either of our children or our niece, Persephone said, trying to reassure her husband. King Ben just has a question he wanted to ask both of us. I thought this better than escorting the king to the Isle.
I think Mal would kill us if anything happened to the Sunspot,
Hades nodded.
But where is he? You said he had a question, and I don't see him next to you. Unless you've turned him invisible.
I teleported us from Auradon Prep, dear. You know what teleportation does to mortals, especially those who aren't used to it. Ben sighed and stood up. He knew there was no more delaying, especially as Lord Hades stood there chuckling.
Thank you, Lady Persephone, for allowing me to use your portal, and both of you for your time. You know you don't have to turn on the royal tone just because you're talking to two gods. I know Zeus sits on your council, so he might insist on it, but clearly that's not the case here.
Hades told him, the amused look still on his face. Hades, be nice, Persephone said, even though she looked a bit abused. Ben sighed.
Sorry. I had something I wanted to ask the two of you, and I didn't want to start off on the wrong foot. Well, mortals asking favours of the gods isn't exactly a new thing, Hades stated.
Ben bit his lip softly.
It's less of a favour of the gods, and more permission from the parents of my girlfriend.
Both gods stilled and looked at Ben, as if wanting him to elaborate. Ben sighed and straightened up. There was no turning back now.
Lady Persephone, Lord Hades, I love your daughter. More than anything. I don't ever want to be without her. I am asking your permission to propose to your daughter, and hopefully make her my wife and queen. You are aware she is under the age of 18?
I am aware, Ben nodded, looking at Hades.
I am more than fine with a long engagement, making it so we'll be married when we're both 20. I just want Mal to know that there's no one else for me. As I said, I love Mal more than anything. If the issue was our age, I'd be happy to ask again once we're both 18.
Why are you asking us? Persephone asked, her voice soft, yet loud enough to draw the attention of both of the men. As king, you don't need anyone's permission. You could propose to Mal today, if you so chose.
Ben sighed. Because I'd rather propose to the girl I love, knowing that I had her parents' permission, rather than it be a shock to anyone. I love Mal. I don't want to cause her any stress. But not only that, you're her parents. You raised her to be the amazing woman she is today. You deserve the courtesy of me asking. It's how I was raised.
Persephone wasn't going to lie. She teared up a little at hearing Ben's words. She could tell the young man in front of her truly loved her daughter, just as she knew Mal loved him.
I know Mal would probably whack me over the head for this, and mutter about me being old-fashioned,
Ben said as he continued to speak.
But I only get to propose once, and I want to make sure I do it right. So, may I please have your permission to propose to, and hopefully marry your daughter?
Hades thought about it for a moment.
I can't speak for Persephone, but I will give my approval on 3 conditions. What conditions will those be, Lord Hades? Number 1. You know that if you ever hurt her, I won't care who you are. Your soul will be subjected to the worst things in the underworld has to offer. And believe me, between Persephone and myself, that's quite a long list. Plus, I'm sure Demeter would offer some suggestions if she found out you had hurt her granddaughter. Number 2, as we stated, the wedding cannot take place until both of you are 20. And I just realised you probably have already met the 3rd condition. Out of curiosity, what is that condition, Lord Hades? Pass a meet and greet with Mal's dog.
Hades said with a small smirk.
Trust me, if you didn't meet his approval, you wouldn't be getting near Mal, no matter how much you loved her, or how much she loves you.
Ben smiled as he thought of Estelle.
Her dog is extremely protective of Mal, and he's the best dog I've ever seen. Your other 2 conditions are agreeable as well, and I would like to say that I would never do anything to hurt Mal, be it unintentionally or otherwise. As for waiting to be married, I think my parents might be put at ease with that condition as well.
Hades nodded and looked over at Persephone.
Steph, do you have any conditions that might prevent our approval?
Will you make her happy? You are aware that she is more than likely to be immortal, being our daughter with my adopting her. You have no issue with that, or any magic your potential children may possess, with her godly and fey abilities? Persephone asked, her voice soft. It honestly was hard to believe that this question was already being asked. As much as she loved Mal and wanted her to be happy, there was a part of Persephone that wanted to wrap Mal up in a blanket and keep her from aging, or experiencing the harsh pain of the death of loved ones.
Of course,
Ben nodded, pulling Persephone out of her thoughts that were growing rather morbid for such a happy moment.
I took that into consideration when Mal informed me of her true parentage. As well, any children we may have would also potentially have magic from my side, as I have some residual beast enchantment, so I would have no issue with that.
Persephone nodded. Good. I have no objection with you proposing, but remember this, King Ben. If you hurt her, you will have all of Olympus to answer to, king or no.
Understood, my lady.
Hades couldn't help but give a small sad smile at that. Mal. His little girl. She was truly too young to be getting engaged. Why in the world should he even agree to this? She wasn't even old enough to get married by the mortal standard, let alone by the gods. Besides, he already lost 5 years with her due to Maleficent stealing her away. He didn't want her to leave him again. But he could tell how happy his daughter was with Ben. Every time they came by the underworld, he had a chance to see them interact. There was a light in Ben's eyes that couldn't be faked, a tenderness in his touch that made it clear that the last thing he would ever do was hurt Mal. Even the little he saw of them at Ben's coronation, watching the two of them in the carriage, showed how much he loved her.
At least it's Ben, he thought with an internal sigh. She could be getting married to someone far worse. And at least she won't be getting married right away. If anything, that's points in the little sunspot's favour. But did he have to be Beast's son?
Now, Hades? Really?
I thought the mind link wasn't active.
Well, it was, Persephone mentally told him. Be grateful that you somehow only made it so I would be the one to receive it. If Mal heard you, there's nothing wrong with King Ben. He's done more to help the Isle than anyone in Auradon. Just because his father created the Isle doesn't mean Mal shouldn't get to be with the boy she loves.
And what would prevent Beast from chucking Mal back to the Isle if she does something that he doesn't like?
1, Beast isn't going to have the chance because he's out of power, and 2, Belle finally gets a daughter with Ben marrying Mal. I may have to share Mal with her, but sharing with Belle is a lot more palatable than sharing with Maleficent.
You have a point there.
So, what are we not going to do?
Give Beastie Jr. grief for the fact that his father set up a penal isle and left children to rot on it for 20 years, never checking on the food delivery system, and allowing a geriatric despot to cause adults and children alike to starve to death?
Exactly. Hades held back a sigh. Honestly, he was a little impressed that Ben had asked permission. In all honesty, Hades wasn't aware if people still asked for permission anymore, considering marriage wasn't really done on the Isle. It was more of alliances that were permanently exclusive. As well, like Persephone said, with Ben's position as High King, he wouldn't need to get permission. But Ben still asked for it, from 2 gods nonetheless. However, there was no denying the fact that this was his little girl, his only daughter. He didn't want her growing up too fast. That being said, though, he couldn't deny her happiness, and Ben made her happy. There was no arguing against that. There was only one thing he could do.
You have my permission to propose to Mal, King Ben,
Hades said, his voice soft, and Ben looked over at him.
Appreciated, Lord Hades,
Ben said, giving a small bow of his head.
My 2 conditions still stand, though. The actual wedding won't occur until you're 20, and you hurt her. There won't be a punishment your soul won't know. Understood, Lord Hades. Lady Persephone.
Ben nodded.
You have my word that those conditions will be met. Good. Now, do you have any thoughts about the ring?
Hades asked. He was the god of gems, after all, and if his daughter was going to get engaged, he was going to make sure the ring suited her.
I was going to model it after my mother's engagement ring,
Ben told him, trying not to react at the change in tone the conversation had taken.
But I would appreciate any input, Lord Hades. I know this is one of your areas of expertise.
Hades nodded, thinking to himself,
What kind of gem were you planning on? Diamond? Sapphire? Amethyst?
Amethyst.
Purple is Mal's trademark colour, after all,
Ben said with a smile. Hades nodded.
If you're in need of a gem, I should be able to provide one. The offer is greatly appreciated, Lord Hades. I was going to ask my friend Doug to reach out to his dad and uncles, but... Ben bit his lip. I was hoping to possibly propose at Cotillion, so I know time is of the essence here. I don't really know how long it would take to mine a gem. I can send you an amethyst gem today, Hades stated.
It would mean more anyway, to have the gem come from him, rather than it just be a random gem that dwarves found. He tried his best not to react at the time frame Ben mentioned, knowing how close Cotillion was. Gods, it was mere days away, really. Well, more like a week, but a week was just a collection of days.
Greatly appreciated, Lord Hades.
Ben nodded, and he couldn't help the smile that pulled at his lips. He was really doing this. He had permission from Mal's parents, and he was finally able to finish Mal's ring. The stained glass window had been completed, and would be able to be revealed at Cotillion. Its unveiling would be the perfect place to propose to Mal.
Was there anything else you needed?
Hades asked.
If not, I can go ahead and get that gem sent over to you.
Ben shook his head.
That was it. Thank you again, Lord Hades. I can have an attendant sent over, or even have Hattie run over and get the gem. I know he's been wanting to see you. As much as I would love to see him, I'd rather not have my son running around the Isle unattended,
Hades stated.
Especially seeing as this would be such a quick visit. Besides, it sounds like time is not on our side here.
Ben nodded. He hated the idea of disappointing Hattie, if or when he found out he could have gone to see his dad. But Hades was right. The Isle was a dangerous place, especially for someone so young. God or not, Mal would never forgive him if Ben made it so that something happened to her brother. And Ben would rather not have 3 gods angry at him. 4 if Demeter ever found out that something had possibly happened to her grandson.
Dean would probably be able to duck over to the Isle and then come back. He thought with an inward nod. Besides, he's the only one I can really trust to keep this a secret. Amir and Akio are great, but they'll be too excited to not potentially spill the beans. Even if this was just to the Tawny team, somehow the news would find its way to Mal, considering both Jay and Carlos are on the team. Thank you again for your time, Lord Hades, Lady Persephone,
Ben said softly, as he realised he had been standing there silent for possibly some time.
Hey, I had nothing better to do,
Hades joked. Hades? Persephone shook her head but smiled in amusement. It honestly was hard to believe that her little girl, the baby she had held in her arms and cuddled to sleep, she was soon to be engaged to be married. At least it was to someone who loved Mal, and someone who Persephone was sure Mal loved in return. One only had to compare Ben's interactions with Mal and his prior interactions with Princess Audrey to see that. It was as different as night and day. One thing was for sure. This cotillion was going to be one Mal would never forget. And it was safe to say, neither would all of Auradon. End of chapter. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed that one. I really like that. I know it's old-fashioned to ask a father's permission, but I like Ben's reasonings behind that. Not only was he raised for it, he also wants to do it right, and I love that. I really do. It shows genuine character. And again, these are gods he's interacting with. He may be a high king, but he's also a mortal man. Boy, really, he's not even 18 yet. So that takes some serious guts. And I like that Hades is providing the gem. That's really nice. Anyway, you guys know the drill. Like, comment, and subscribe, and hit that bell to get notified whenever I upload a new video. Have a good day, night, or whatever time zone you're in. Bye, my guys, gals, and non-binary pals. I'll see you in another video. Take care.